Tarps Off Sports.
Bang, we are back again for episode 9 of the Tarps Off UK MMA podcast. UFC Vegas 32, Frank. That was something else. I don't even know. Was it a great card? Was it a terrible card? Was it both? I would go with it was both. The judges made a mockery of some of the fights. However, it was the entertainment value was through the roof.
Yeah, 100%. The fighters all turned up and put on great performances. And we were only let down by the judges, like you said. A couple of very dodgy calls in there.
Yeah, and there was an interesting fight on the prelims. It was Mickey Gall was on there, and I think almost everybody was picking against Mickey Gall. I actually had Mickey Gall, but not by the way he won it. I did have him by submission, but Jordan Williams, you would have thought would have the striking advantage on the feet. Mickey Gall was able to piece him up on the feet and then get it to the ground and finish him by submission, where I thought Mickey Gall was going to get, a little pieced up on the feet. I thought he was going to shoot for a takedown, and I had him winning by submission that way. But Mickey Gall dominates.
Yeah, he looked great. Well, you've got to remember his last fight against Mike Perry, the only reason he lost that fight is because Mike Perry turned into a wrestler all of a sudden. He was winning a lot of the striking exchanges against Perry. But even in that fight, his striking didn't look as crisp as it did against Williams. Yeah, he looked great. He's finally turning into an actual mixed martial artist rather than just like a BJJ protege.
Yeah, well, I have a fight for you. Ian Gary versus Mickey Gall. What about that welcome to the UFC for Ian Gary? How would you feel about that fight as a possibility?
I love that fight, actually. Mickey Gall's a weird one because he has name value without... Well, I mean, in the past, he's been a very one-dimensional fighter, but now, obviously, he's putting it together. And yeah, big name, but also he's not ranked, and he's not of the same skill level as, the top 15 or whatever. I think that's a great introduction for Ian Gary into the UFC, actually, 100%. I like that a lot.
And maybe we should tell the fans why Mickey Gall has a big name. He defeated CM Punk, actually. that is Mickey Gall's big claim to fame. However, he is a legitimately very well-rounded mixed martial arts fighter. I don't know if he was before. He was more of that BJJ guy, but he's really kind of brought it all together here. And then we go to the main event, or not the main event, the main card of UFC Vegas 32. And we get a banger right off the start. An absolute war. It went 2 rounds, but it almost felt like it was a 5-round fight between Costa and Yanez. How did you see that fight?
I mean, I think it was actually you last time on the show called it spot on, in that if Randy Costa's going to win, he's going to win in the first round. Otherwise, Yanez is gonna, take over the fight, and that's exactly what happened. Costa looked great in that first round. I'm a karate guy, and some of the sort of traditional techniques he was throwing, like that lead leg question mark kick, was absolutely sublime. But yeah, and then suddenly everything switched as soon as that first round finished, and Yanez just showed off those hands that we all know he has. And that's why he's getting compared to people like Jorge Masvidal.
Yeah, I think people thought I was a little crazy live on stream once the first round ended and Costa absolutely demolished, and I was like, oh, Yanez is going to win the fight now. And I did call that one. I'll give myself a little pat on the back there. But I think those two gentlemen called it themselves. They said before even the first fight, this is going to be a trilogy. Like, this is going to be a war. I want to see that fight again really bad. If they could do it tomorrow, and I would watch it. I mean, what a fight that was. It didn't even win fight of the night either. I mean, because this card was just wild.
Yeah.
And then in the next fight, we had Macy Barber versus Miranda Maverick. And this is where the controversy really comes in. I don't agree with the officiating. Not many people agree with the officiating. How did you feel about how that fight went down?
Yeah, it was shocking, wasn't it? And for a few reasons, not just in the judging. Like I messaged a few times on your stream last night and just saying, why are the UFC putting these two girls together? Literally in a division where that is sort of bereft of any upcoming talent. Why are you putting your only 2 prospects big prospects up against one another. And also the way it ended is the worst way it could have ended, in that Miranda Maverick now has a loss on a record. Macy Barber has a win, but a win that's so contentious that no one's going to really count it as a win. They've both come off that fight looking worse than they did. Yeah, and obviously the judging was horrendous in my opinion. Easily 2 rounds for Miranda Maverick. But I don't know.
And I thought the rounds were obvious too. Maverick, round 1. Maverick, round 2. Barber, round 3. It was so clear cut. And the fight also went the opposite of how I thought it was going to. I thought Barber might have a little bit of advantage in striking, I predicted. And I thought when it got to the grappling, Maverick would dominate. I couldn't have been more wrong. It was the absolute other way around. But where do these fighters go in the rankings? I mean, Barber was behind Maverick. Can you really have her jumper after that fight? Because Maverick won that fight. The only 2 people I think that didn't think Maverick won were 2 of the judges that were sitting at the scoring table. And that wasn't the only controversial fight of the night, but we're going to get to that in a little bit. But first we have then Darren Elkins versus Derek Minner. And that fight was on crack. That it was wild. I mean, Minner, did he bet like with Vegas that he was going to win by submission? Because he kept that on the feet. I just don't see how he would have lost that fight. But round 2 comes out and he immediately shoots for a takedown and gets himself right into trouble.
It's vintage Darren Elkins, though, isn't it? Getting absolutely battered in the first round and then going out and finishing the poor guy. But yeah, it was a weird one, because I think Derek Minner is technically a very talented fighter, and I think he's great on the ground. We saw him against Charles Rosa in his last fight, and he dominated the jiu-jitsu wizard. So he's good, but one of the big things was him giving up, or no, switching from the triangle choke to an armbar. Once he did that, then suddenly Elkins is able to just transition out, and then Minner loses that submission threat, and Elkins just goes to work, and that crucifix position was just you hate to be like, imagine being stuck in that.
I have been stuck in that before. I did wrestle. I do have a wrestling background. It's tough to get out of the crucifix when you're in it.
No one's dropping elbows on you and just wrestling.
Exactly. No, that makes matters a lot worse. It's already not fun to be stuck there. Never mind getting elbows paraded on your head. But I think Minner was the better fighter for most of the fight again and lost.
Yeah.
It was like the story of this card. If you're the better fighter, you lost. I think we saw it in almost every single fight on the main card. And if he had just kept that standing, I think he would have gotten a W. But it wasn't the end of the controversy, because then we have Paiva versus Phillips. I watched the fight back actually already, and I have it as a draw.
Okay.
I had Phillips getting the 10-8 in round 1, and then I had Paiva winning the next 2 rounds, so 28-28. But the judges, and if I were to lean another way, I would have given it to Phillips. Like, I thought it was either a draw or Phillips won. But the judges go with Paiva.
I'm not against that. I thought Paiva did everything that he needed to, like everything he could in his power. Phillips came out and just, dominated in that first round and threw him around and just had fun in there. And then I thought, Paiva's durability and his adaptability came through. I was okay with the result.
That one didn't make me as mad as the Barber versus Maverick fight by any means.
Yeah, I did call it as well pre-fight. I think it was Joe, one of our writers, put his predictions out there, and I was like, nah, Paiva is a live dog here, 100%. And he was.
Yeah, if you took him at the live odds after that first round, you would have definitely made some cash on that one. But that wasn't the end of the controversy. And now, I don't know, we haven't actually talked about this main event yet, but Dillashaw versus Sandhagen goes down, and that was a 5-round war. TJ Dillashaw coming back from the PED 2-year suspension, didn't look like he missed a beat, but he got a really bad cut over the eye. You saw Eddie Alvarez tweet during the fight that if he was in his corner, he would have stopped the fight. I was glad they didn't. The cut was in one of those zones where
zone
the
4.
refs, zone 4, where the ref will not stop the fight, or he looks at it, but it's not an immediate stoppage. And I'm glad the ref did not stop it, because TJ Dillashaw proves he's an absolute warrior and wins the fight. Now, I scored it very differently watching it back than how I scored it there. Well, I got the chat running. I got multiple things going on.
Yeah.
So I actually scored that for TJ Dillashaw, but in a very close one. I think it was tied going into the 5th round, and I thought Dillashaw did enough in the 5th round. But I would have no problem for the people that did score that for Sandhagen. I thought it was a very close fight that could have gone either way. You don't like to leave fights like that in the judge's hands, especially in a title eliminator like it was. But how did you feel about how that fight went down?
Yeah, I was okay with it. Similar to you, I would have been all right with it going either way, to be honest. It was a wild fight. Like, what a fight it was. Let's just give credit to both these elite level athletes. One of my reasons, so I'm a big Corey Sandhagen fan, but one of the reasons why I wasn't too mad, I didn't let my bias cloud my sort of judgment when it came to the judges giving it to Dillashaw, is just because of Sandhagen's insistence on throwing those spinning attacks. That wasn't that so frustrating though? Like, just repeatedly, and then each time, giving up his back to Dillashaw. I mean, he did sort of start to figure it out towards the end of the fight, but I don't know. That seemed like such a mistake on his part. And in my opinion, lost him the fight. So I hope it just acts as like a learning curve for Sandhagen. I hope, I don't know what they do with Dillashaw, if he just like sits on the side until Aljo versus Jan finishes up, stick him in the title fight, or does he want to keep active? We don't know. I imagine that cut's going to take a while to heal, to be fair.
That's what I'm thinking. I would sit on the sidelines, wait for Aljo versus Jan, let that cut heal up. And what I would do with Sandhagen here is I would go Rob Font. I know we talked about it. Rob Font, a very different fighter than TJ Dillashaw. TJ Dillashaw is much more of a pressure fighter, as Rob Font likes to sit back and pick his shots. A little similar to Sandhagen in that sense. And I think that could be an explosive battle where I would think somebody's getting knocked out in Sandhagen versus Font. I think it would be a great fight.
Yeah.
The fans would win. I don't know who would win the fight. I'm not ready to throw a prediction. I would love to go with my Boston guy, but I'm going to check the bias at the door and definitely see if that gets announced and wait to make a prediction then. But
it would be a really interesting matchup, because I think I agree in that they are kind of similar fighters, but the main, even in just like stature, they both fight like long fighters. The main difference being Rob Font is all about his fundamentals, whereas Sandhagen, excels at being an orthodox striker. The flying knee against Frankie Edgar, the spinning wheel kick against Marlon Moraes. So it would be interesting to see whether the basics or the unorthodoxness sort of takes, gives one fighter the lead over the other. So it's a great fight if it gets made. I pray it does.
I mean, styles make fights, and those styles would be really fun to watch go against each other. But a question we were getting last night in the live stream was, how do you feel that TJ Dillashaw does versus either Aljo or Jan? And to be honest, I think Jan is going to walk away with the belt after he goes against Sterling. So I'm really going to focus on Jan. And I don't like that matchup for TJ. I think Jan's going to be tough to beat for TJ Dillashaw, and I would pick Jan, and I would pick him probably by knockout.
Yep, I completely agree. Don't know about knockout. Dillashaw's fairly durable, but yeah, I would definitely lean towards Piotr Jan. Just he can dominate that fight in so many different ranges. I think he's good enough to go strike for strike with Dillashaw, and you know, is there anyone with a better clinch game in the bantamweight division than Piotr Jan? That is just an animal when it gets to that tight clinch.
Well, I think Dillashaw would need to be able to take him down to win that fight, and I just don't know if you can take down Jan. But if anybody can do it, I mean, TJ Dillashaw has some of the most elite wrestling in the entire UFC. Again, styles make fights. It's another fun one. There's so many fights to make in that division right now. It's great.
Wild. Also, we've got Merab Dvalishvili, or whatever his name is, the Georgian wrestler. That man is such a problem, and he's fighting Marlon Moraes soon. I think he could be Jan's kryptonite. I wouldn't be surprised if Jan clears everyone up until Merab gets him, because Merab will just throw you around for fun.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see all the fights in that division, and then we have a return, the return of Conor McGregor to the gym, and that leads us to the question: who does the Notorious fight next? He's the biggest draw in the UFC, the biggest name, but it's looking brutal for Conor McGregor right now. He needs a win. He needs an opponent more on the cowboy style. Rather than a top level guy right now. I think we need to rebuild Conor McGregor again. So who does Conor McGregor fight right now?
Well, I suppose I'm pretty certain he wants to return at lightweight, and who knows if the UFC ends up giving him bloody Dustin Poirier a fourth time, which if they do, I think that's a travesty, but you know how much Dana and the rest of the UFC love their money. In terms of looking for fights, I mean, number one, of course, is Nate Diaz. That's always going to be there. It's always going to be a big draw, and it's always going to be an interesting fight. But that's the easy answer, isn't it? We want the fun ones.
See, I think that Nate Diaz, I think he needs to build himself up before he gives him that Nate Diaz fight. Right now, I'm not sure it's a gigantic draw to see Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz. Whereas if you get Conor another win, then it becomes a huge draw. You get Nate another fight, and then that's the last fight on Nate's contract, which makes it even bigger. So I would hold off a little bit just to make that fight even bigger. And the guy that I would give to Conor McGregor is a guy that you can make the promos of. You can sell the fight. Who the fuck is that guy? Jeremy Stevens versus Conor McGregor.
Oh, wow.
Jeremy Stevens is in a bad place right now. He needs a win. Conor needs a win. Put the two guys that need it against each other and have them battle for their UFC lives right now.
That's one that I haven't even considered. Interesting. I'm not against it because it would be fun. The only issue is, I suppose, is that Stevens isn't ranked, which might be a bit of a
well, Conor right now struggling. Yeah. I mean, he's won one fight. Him and Miesha Tate, I believe, have the same amount of wins since like 2017 or something.
Nice.
He's in a bad place.
Could always do Dan Hooker. I'm a big fan of Dan Hooker, and he brings the exciting fights out of people, and he's ranked.
I don't like Conor's odds against Dan Hooker one bit. I think Dan Hooker finishes Conor McGregor right now.
Yeah. He loves a good calf kick, does Dan Hooker, doesn't he?
Yeah, that is a rough fight for Conor. I think his legs will be hurting if you give him Dan Hooker. But I mean, it seems like you still want to give Conor that top 10 opponent. I don't right now. I want to rebuild Conor because I think if Conor loses again, he's done. What do you do with him then?
That's true. And that's why the Nate Diaz fight might be slightly appealing to him, because Nate's not ranked. There's always some level of excitement for a trilogy fight, and it's one of the, I'm not going to say easier fights, but Nate's not a top 10 guy. Let's be honest, especially at lightweight. Lightweight is probably the biggest talent pool the UFC has. So I give, and also he doesn't love low leg kicks. But I don't know. I think that's a good fight to make, to be honest. But I doubt they will.
The issue is that Nate is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, unbelievable on the ground. Cesar Gracie has trained him well. Yeah. I think he can submit McGregor whenever he wants to if he gets that takedown. You'll see Conor running again, and I don't know if Conor has that in him anymore. I think Conor's lost a lot of his charisma and
Oh, yeah.
swagger to him. And he's got this like boxing stance now. He doesn't move like he used to anymore. I think he would have to get back to his old fundamentals if he wants to take on Nate Diaz. And I'd like to see him do that against someone else first. Maybe a Jeremy Stevens. And I think Nate is the next fight after. I really do. I think Poirier is 2 away. I think Conor needs 2 wins before you even think about Dustin Poirier again.
Mm-hmm. Or we just feed him to Justin Gaethje.
Oh, God. No. Now you just want McGregor out of the UFC.
I mean, I've wanted that for a while. I'm not going to lie.
But then we have another big card coming up. We have a couple big cards coming up. But the ones we're going to talk about here are Aljo versus Yan, which I think we're both taking Yan. I mean, the only reason Aljo won was because Yan got DQ'd on a dumb knee, which was a stupid move by Yan. Do I think he did it on purpose? Obviously not. I don't think he wanted to lose his belt by kneeing Aljo in the head. I've seen people say that. Oh, well, what a cheap move. It's not. You're being an idiot.
Yeah. One of his cornermen shouts, knee him.
Yes.
When he's in that position. So, he obviously, I mean, if you're a bloody, he was champion at the time, wasn't he? If you're a champion, you should know the UFC regulations and rules. So I do put it on Yan a bit, but also if his corner's giving him that sort of advice, I mean, in the heat of the moment as well, what do you expect? Stupid,
you're locked in a cage with another man fighting.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
You're not really at the clearest mindset there, and things don't move in slow motion.
Yeah, of course, and so that fight is UFC 257, I believe.
Yes,
or 267.
I think so.
Yeah, on the same card as Jan Blachowicz and Glover Teixeira for the light heavyweight belt.
See, I think that fight is not going to be close.
Really?
I think it goes all 5 rounds, but I think Jan wins it very easily.
Interesting.
And that's no slight at Glover Teixeira. I think Jan is just the best light heavyweight by a long margin if you don't factor John Jones in that division because he's now moved to heavyweight.
What about Yuri Prochazka?
Okay, now that's a little more interesting.
Yeah. But that's one for the future. Stick him up against Alexander Rakic, and
let him get a couple wins first, or maybe even 1 win. Actually, I think if he beats,
he's ranked
Rakic,
second, I think, or third. So he's well.
Yeah, I think just 1 win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I'm very intrigued for Jan versus Glover. Of course, when the fight comes closer, we'll go a lot more in detail for it. But I don't know. I really would not be surprised. Or maybe I would be a little surprised, but I wouldn't be too shocked if Glover just did his old man thing and ground out a fight. Takes Jan down and just smothers him. He's got that relentless top pressure. You remember what he did to poor Anthony Smith, just knocking his teeth out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm intrigued to see how Blachowicz's ground game will stack up, because I think that's going to be the big deciding factor of how that fight goes, is if he can defend takedowns or transition takedowns, just how he deals with Glover's pressure, because I think he's a better striker, Jan is. We all saw what he did to Dominic Reyes, which was just brutal.
Jan's also very hard to take down.
Yeah. But Glover's such a wily veteran, isn't he? He can, he's got ways of doing stuff that other fighters just don't. He's so much experience in there that he knows all the little tricks. So it's a fight I'm genuinely really excited for, even though neither of them are like massive names. It's one that I'm properly looking forward to.
Yeah, and we also have another UFC card this weekend. It's going to fly a little under the radar with Bellator having that gigantic fight that we talked about last week between Pitbull and McKee. But Strickland versus Hall is still a great fight with a lot of implications here. I think Strickland is right outside the top 10, if I'm not mistaken. I think Uriah Hall is just inside the top 10. So it's basically a top 10 fight here. And I'm liking the guy. I don't know if he's the underdog. I haven't looked at the lines yet. I'm liking the guy outside the top 10. I'm liking Strickland. I think it's going to be a war. Uriah Hall is one of those guys. He's the most athletic guy in the UFC. I think literally the most athletic.
Now that Romero's
However,
gone.
he doesn't really use it too well. So it's like I got Strickland, but I got it by decision.
Yeah, I think with Hall, the thing that's limited him for so long is mentality. I think, you know, he can mentally break. His body will keep going, but mentally he can sort of freeze or crumble, or make rash decisions. So yeah, I agree. And also, you know, when Strickland's in the cage, he will talk you down as he walks you down. And he has looked so good lately. We saw last night how good Brendan Allen is. He looked incredible against Punahale Soriano, mainly in the striking department.
Yeah.
And what Strickland's last fight was against Brendan Allen, and he outstruck him completely, like walked him down and made Allen look like a novice. So
I think Strickland had one other fight since then. I think that was 2 fights ago.
Okay.
But Strickland's been getting called out by just about everybody in that division.
He's such a dick.
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants to fight him. I would love to see, we will see it. I can't wait to see Uriah Hall versus Strickland. But I think Strickland comes out with the W. But Uriah Hall could shock some people. I mean, he had that win over Chris Weidman, but I feel like we didn't even see a fight. It was the first strike of the match, and it was a leg check that just crumbled Chris Weidman's leg. You hate to see it, although the UFC loves to show it.
What's your set prediction then? How do you see this fight going? Like,
I think Strickland wins it by decision.
Okay, see, I think it's a KO coming, just because it's 5 rounds, and I think Strickland's going to walk him down, going to keep walking down, keep talking at him, and Hall will be fine for the first 2 rounds, and he's going to start to panic because he's seeing this tall, crisp boxer striker walking him down constantly, and he's going to make some sort of stupid move, lash out, leave himself open, and get countered and dropped. I think it's a KO in the 3rd round.
See, I think it's a decision. I don't think it's a 50-45. I think you'll see Uriah Hall win a round or 2. Okay. But I do have it going to decision, and I've got Strickland in that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a shame the rest of the card doesn't really stack up. It's a great main event, but...
Well, I mean, we have a great card from Bellator too.
Yeah.
I know they've lost a couple fights recently, but that main event is just so good. It doesn't really matter what you have with it because it is Pitbull versus McKee. And again, I think that fight's going to be a trilogy. It's kind of like how we all like compared Yanez and Costa. We're like, they haven't even thrown down. This is going to be a trilogy. Pitbull, McKee. It should live up to the bill. It's going to be super exciting. And even if Pitbull comes out there and drops him right away, McKee has never taken a loss. So it's going to be interesting if Pitbull does get that victory to see how McKee bounces back. I'm pumped to watch that this weekend. Probably a little more so than the UFC fight.
100% more. I'm not going to be watching the UFC this weekend. I'll catch the highlights the next day.
That's how I feel. I'm going to be watching that Bellator fight. Anything else you want to talk about this week, Frank? Or are we leaving the people?
I think that's it for this week. Not too much, but a good weekend of fights, and hopefully we have another good one coming up.
Yeah, and I would suggest tuning into the Bellator this weekend over the UFC, but that's just me. Pitbull, McKee, Hall, Strickland should be another great weekend of fights.